Howdy everyone, welcome back to the channel. In my last video, we started our journey into local web development by installing XAMPP on a virtual machine running Windows 10. We created two virtual hosts, widgetcompany.local and widgetdeveloper.local, and we created self-signed certificates for each of these virtual hosts, ultimately allowing us to enable HTTPS and HTTP2. In this video, I want to continue the journey by installing WordPress. There's no one-click solution here. Onto each of these virtual hosts. Widget Developer is going to get the core WordPress installation, WordPress 6.1.1, while Widget Company is going to get the same core install, but we're going to configure it as a WordPress multi-site. So if you're ready to get started, we're going to go ahead and dive right in. All right, so we've got our virtual machine up and running. We're going to go ahead and validate a couple of settings inside of our virtual host configurations. So we need to go into the C drive and the XAMPP folder, and then within there, the Apache, conf, extra, and we're going to look at the HTTPD vhosts and the HTTPD SSL config files. So let's do our non-SSL vhosts first. So first thing we're going to do, because we do not want to allow directory indexing, we're going to remove the indexes option from our directive that allows access to all of our virtual sites. And then we're going to validate down here, widgetcompany.local has a server alias using a wildcard, which is exactly what we need to use for the way we're going to set up our WordPress multi-site. So we're going to leave that one be. But underneath widgetdeveloper.local, we're not really going to use wildcards. We're just setting it up as a single WordPress install, so we're going to change the server alias from the star.widgetdeveloper to www.widgetdeveloper. So we're going to go ahead and save those changes, and then we're going to open our HTTPD SSL config file. And we're going to scroll down to where our virtual hosts are defined. And we're going to verify the same settings here. Widgetcompany.local has the wildcard. And widget developer, we're going to replace the wildcard with www. We're going to save that. And just for sanity's sake, we're going to go ahead and syntax check our configuration. HTTP D- and the -T is for a syntax check, so it says syntax has been validated and everything's okay. So we're going to go to our services, Apache, restart. All right, restart successful. I'm just going to minimize that, and I'm going to minimize my command prompt because we may need them again down the road. So we're just going to verify that these open. So if I go to widgetdeveloper.local and www.widgetdeveloper.local, they both go to the same page. So we know that that is good to go. So our next step that we have to take is to download the WordPress distribution. To do this, we visit wordpress.org, hover over the download and extend menu option, and select Get WordPress. So up front and center is the button to download the latest official release, which in this case is WordPress 6.1.1. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to Start that download, and it's already complete. Fast internet tonight. But if you want to look for other releases, you can click on this link down here that's labeled Releases. And you can get 6.1, 603, 602, or even older downloads. And down here in this past releases area, they also have the beta and release candidates. So if you wanted to test the latest 6.2, you can download the zip or the tar gzip files directly from here. Now that our download is complete, we're going to go ahead and open the containing folder, and we're going to look at the contents of the zip file first. So you'll notice that the zip file contains a folder called WordPress, and within that is the actual core distribution files. So the manual install method, you can decompress this, or you can just select everything from within the zip, which is what I'm going to do right now. Is I'm going to copy the contents of the zip file, and I'm going to come back to my C drive. And if you recall from the previous video when we set up the sites, our virtual hosts are contained within the folder called Sites. And I'm going to start with Widget Developer because that's just going to get the core WordPress. And our public HTML folder, which is the folder we created to store everything. And I'm going to remove index.html and info.php. And I'm going to paste in the contents of the zip file. So this is going to take a couple of minutes to complete. And once that's done, I'm going to do the exact same thing, just to copy the core files into the widget company public HTML as well. So if you're following along, go ahead and let these files copy, and we'll come back as soon as the copying is done. So our core WordPress files have been copied. So here is the WordPress folder structure underneath Widget Developer and Widget Company. So all the files are there. So again, as we're going to start with Widget Developer, we're going to go ahead and find our wp config sample.php file, and we're simply going to rename this to wp config.php. And we're going to go ahead and open this for editing. And we also need to visit localhost/phpMyAdmin because we need to create, technically you don't need to create the databases up front, but in this case I actually want to create user accounts that's going to be specific to each of our virtual hosts, and I want to do that manually so that we're not using the default root user. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a user account, and we're going to call this Widget Developer just to keep things simple. And password, we're going to go ahead and let the phpMyAdmin generate that for us, and we're going to copy the password into our wp config file where it says password here, and we're going to go ahead and copy the user name as well and put that where it says username here. They make it pretty easy. Database name, we haven't gotten to that part yet, so we're going to go ahead and grant all privileges on wildcard database names. So basically any database that starts with widget developer, so widget developer underscore WP, widget developer underscore code igniter, or any arbitrary database name that you give it will pick it up as long as it starts with the username and an underscore. So we're going to go ahead and create the user. We are not going to save that here. Now we're going to go to databases, and we need widget developer underscore WP. I'm just going to keep things kind of simple. It's already got our default database collation, so we're going to create the database. All right, so the database is created, the user is created. So now the database name we're going to replace with widget developer underscore WP. Next thing we want to do is generate some unique security salts. They're going to be specific to this server or this installation. So we're going to visit this website that is defined right within the WP config file. They give you the link to visit. And just to be thorough, we're going to hit refresh a handful of times, and then we're going to copy the content from the web page and replace the content that's in the existing config file. And we're also going to change the database table prefix. So by default, WordPress always uses WP underscore. For security reasons, it's a great idea to change this. And in this case, I'm just going to do DWP for widget developer WordPress. All right. And really, just to get the install going, this is all that we need to do in this file. So we're going to save our WP config file. And then if we visit widget developer and reload, here is our WordPress installation screen. So it prompts first for our language, in this case, English. And then it asks for a site title, widget developer, username, So username, make this specific to you, but for demonstration purposes, WP developer admin, and it gives us a password already. So just to make sure that I don't forget what this is definitely not recommended, but create a text file. And we're going to, just so I don't forget it here in the next 10 seconds, I'm going to copy this information just so I can use it again. Not super concerned because this is on a local development machine. It's not on the public internet. So and not really needed since it's not available to the public, but we're going to disable or discourage search engines and install WordPress. So it says it's been installed. Click the button to log in. So we're going to log in with our pertinent info. And there is our core WordPress install. From here, you can show, hide, rearrange the dashboard widgets as you see fit. And we're going to go to plugins, and I'm going to delete Akismet, and I'm going to delete Hello Dolly. And I'm going to go down to settings, general. I'm going to give my site a tagline, leading developer of widgets, and our URL and WordPress address and site address are matching with our HTTPS. Currently, there is no registration enabled. You can enable that if you wish. Default user role, site language defaults to the one that you selected. Time zone always defaults to UTC, but you can change that to be your time zone, as well as modifying your date and time formats and what day the week starts on. Save my changes again. There's nothing under the writing tab that I think needs to be changed right now. Reading tab, we'll come back to this a little bit later after we create a couple of static pages. Discussion, not a huge issue here since we're working on local dev. But one of the things that I do highly recommend is the email me whenever, just leave it as a comment is held for moderation. And then before a comment appears, comment author must have a previously approved comment. That means that whenever somebody submits a comment on your site, and this is anywhere, they must have at least one that you have manually approved prior to them having carte blanche on submitting more comments. Performance related, you should break your comments into pages. Then you can change the number of how many top level comments per page. You can change the avatar settings. You can disable it completely so it doesn't go out to Gravatar, which is a third-party service. Next thing I'm going to go down to is permalinks. By default, WordPress uses URL parameters passed via the get method. You've got a bunch of options here. Most commonly, everybody goes down to the post name option so that you get the shortest URL possible using the post slug, which automatically gets created by a post or page title. I'm going to save those changes. And let's go to appearance. And right now we got the 2023, the 2021, and the 2022 theme installed by default. We're going to go ahead and remove some unneeded themes. And you can use either any of the ones that are in here, or you can replace them with the one that you prefer, which I'll actually cover on the next one. Let's look at the pages. So by default, they give you a sample page and a privacy policy. I'm going to delete the sample page, and then I'm going to create a new page and simply call it home. I'm going to publish. I'm going to disable the always show the pre-published checks. And I am not going to view the page right now. I'm just going to go back to my dashboard, and I'm going to create a second page, and I'm going to call this news and blog. And I'm going to change the slug to be news. I'm going to publish that page. I'm going to go back to my dashboard, and then I'm going to go back down to the settings and reading. And I'm going to change what the home page displays. The home page is going to be the home page, and the posts page is going to be the news and blog page that I created. One other thing that we're going to change is for each post in a feed, we're going to tell it to only show the excerpt. That'll kind of help performance on a live site anyways. Just one of those standard best practices. So now if I go out to view site, and I want to do this in an incognito window, so there we go, there's our home page, and there's our news page. And I forgot to show you this, there is a default blog post that's created as well. So if you go back at the admin panel, go to your posts, you'll see the initial hello world post. So I hope you found that useful. In just a minute, I am going to go ahead and run through this configuration underneath widget company.local, and we're going to do this as a multi-site installation. And we're going to make a couple configuration changes specific to multi-site, and we'll actually create at least one subsite underneath of it. So stick around. So installing WordPress MultiSite is the same general principles we followed for a standard WordPress installation. So we're going to go ahead and take our WP config sample.php file and rename it. And just so I can point out, I am in my widget company public HTML folder. I did a little bit of prep work in between steps. So let's open WP config. So we need to go ahead and create a database user, a password, and a database itself. So again, back at our local host, phpMyAdmin, I'm going to go back to the phpMyAdmin home, and I want to go to user accounts, and I want to create a new user account. I'm just going to follow the same principles just for demonstration purposes. Widget company, and generate a new password, and grant all privileges on the wildcard name. And then I need to copy the data into my WP config file. Password. And the username, username. One thing that's really important about the WP config file, because passwords, if they're complex and secure, they'll have special characters in them. It's best to wrap these in the single quotes. That way the special characters don't get interpreted as something else as they would if they were within double quotes. Just an important thing to point out. All right, so we're going to save our user, and then I'm going to go back to databases, and I want widget company WP. Again, just for demonstration purposes, these are not recommended database names. So we're going to create our database, and database name is widget company underscore WP. And last but not least, we need our security keys. So I left this open from the last time, so I'm just going to hit refresh a few more times and copy the provided keys and paste them over the ones that are in the file now. And again, table prefix, I'm going to change that now to WCWP. Again, there's a methodology to change the table prefix down the road if you wanted to, but it's just super easy if you do it up front. So that is what we're going to do right now. So that is save the changes. So now we're going to refresh the widget company.local. It apparently did not copy something correctly. databases widget company underscore WP. So when in doubt, make sure you've got debugging turned on and enabled. And this might have actually gone into the server log itself, but let's do this. Database, unknown database, widget company, WP. Oh, I made a typo in that database name. How did I do that? Databases, widget company. Apparently, there is no ability to rename it, so we got to drop it. And we'll do this again. That's not what I want. Widget company underscore WP. Create the database. All right, now that we're around that one, I'm going to comment out the debug. Oh, no, I'm going to leave the debug log turned on. But let's go ahead and I keep typing defined instead of just define. Faults. I want WP debug display faults. So I want to capture the debug output into the log, but I don't want it on the screen. So now we'll reload, and there is our installation screen. So we're going to walk through this just like we did before. Widget company and WP, I don't know. Widget company admin, generate a password. And like I did the last time, so I don't forget what I used, I'm going to copy that into a text file. And I said there I went again. I did a double I on widget. And I'm going to use my email again. All right, so now that those are set, widget company, just want to make sure that I didn't do any more typos before I hit install WordPress. So we're going to install WordPress, and then we're going to log into WordPress. And it looks like it carried the password over. It shouldn't have done that. But now we're going to log in to widget company. All right, so welcome to WordPress. Something does not look quite right here because this screen looks very, very scrunched at the moment. It seems very strange that the screen is scrunched up so bad there. Well, this is unique that it's prompting for confirmation about deleting on this site. Something seems off with this installation, so I may dump this and start over. All right, so I found the source of the issue. It was actually a directive that was in the htaccess file. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail right now, but needless to say, dashboard is working as expected now. So again, just like on our core installation in the last step, you can move the widgets around. If you go up to screen options, if you don't want to see, say, quick draft, like if your site does not use blog posts or you don't use this feature, you can turn that on or off. You can turn on and off the welcome message. So again, we're going to go ahead and do the same thing we did last time. I'm going to go to general. So the tagline, I'm actually going to leave the tagline blank for this example site. We are using HTTPS by default. I'm going to change the time zone to my local time zone and change the start day of the week. It's just things that I typically do when I set up a new site. Again, go to permalinks. We're going to change that to use the post name. Save changes. We're going to go into posts. We're going to delete this hello world post. And we're going to go ahead and trash it. And we're going to go into pages. We're going to delete our sample page. And we're going to trash it. And we're going to create, actually before creating any pages, not going to worry about creating pages right now because there's more important things to do. So I removed the default plugins. I'm going to go ahead and trim down the themes really quick. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the tools menu. So by default, you see available tools and then import, export, site health, personal data, export and erase. And then there's a theme file editor and a plugin file editor. We're actually going to disable those here in just a few minutes. But the more important thing is to configure WordPress to allow multi-site. One of the big things to note is that multi-site, once you enable it and you activate the multi-site features, the first administrator account that you created, which is basically our widget company admin, this is user account number 1. This account will become what's called a super administrator. So they will have access to every site that gets created within the network. Also, all the sites on the network share a common user base. So it shares the users table and it shares the users meta table across all the sites in the multi-site network. So I just wanted to point that out. All right, so let's minimize that, get that out of the way. And I'm going to go ahead and minimize the htaccess file because we're going to need that here in a minute. We're also going to need the WP config file again. So I'm going to go ahead and reopen that, minimize it. So what we need to do in our WP config file, And I'm going to do this below security and below the tables, but before the debug. So I'm going to create a bunch of white space, and I'm going to define WP allow multi-site true. So basically that tells WordPress that we are going to allow the multi-site functionality to be enabled on this site. So if I reload my dashboard, you'll notice nothing's really changed yet until we go back down to Tools, and then you see the option called Network Setup. So the first step is to decide whether you want to use subdomains such as site1.www.widgetcompany.local or site2.www.widgetcompany.local. So right now, out of the bat, this is really not what we want to use. So what we need to do is we need to go back to our core settings in general, and really for widget company, we want to take out the www dot. And one of the things that I'm going to have to do, because I did some pre-work over here and I had enabled some rules. So what I'm really going to do is I want to basically just comment out this one rule here, because I do not want to redirect I do want to redirect this to http host. All right. So when I save that, and if I reload or I hit save, so now it's basically going to log me out, but now I'm back to widget company.local with no www prefix, which is really what we want for this multi-site setup that we're going to use. So now we need to log back in. And we're going to go back to, I'm going to go to permalinks. Now that we changed the core website address, we're just going to save our permalinks. Sometimes saving it once doesn't work, so save permalinks twice. And now we go back to Tools and Network Setup. So there we go. Now we've got our structure that we want. If you wanted to use subdirectories, you could have left the www prefix on there, but that's not what we wanted in this example. So we're going to use we're going to use subdomains. So the network, the internet address of your network will be widgetcompany.local. Perfect. The network title, widget company sites. Okay. I mean, you can rename this as you see fit. The network admin email address is going to be the one that was set up as the default admin. So we're going to go ahead and hit install. So warning, wildcard DNS may not be configured correctly. All right. So again, since we're not running a DNS server, the hosts file cannot use a wildcard entry. So for each site that we create, we have to make a manual entry into our hosts file. All right. So it's got to make note of that. Just remember that. So the next piece it tells you is to enable the network. In order to complete, or to enable the network, complete the following steps. So step 1, copy all of this content into our WP config file. And you'll notice this has the defined multi-site true, subdomain install is true, domain for the current site is the top level domain, the path is basically the root folder, and the site ID and blog ID defaults to number 1. So we're going to copy that into our WP config file right below our allow multi-site. Boom. Done. Hit save. Step 2, add the following to your htaccess file. So basically you're going to replace the existing WordPress rules with everything that's defined right here. So we're going to copy that htaccess file, and let me close that and reopen it. I think WordPress wrote to it while I had it open, and Notepad does not auto refresh. So there we go. So here's the WordPress section. So we need to paste all of that content in there. And if I had a different editor installed, I could indent this for readability a lot easier. I just do this just for legibility purposes, so you know that it's contained within a block. All right, so we'll save the htaccess file. And it says, once you've completed these steps, your network will be enabled and configured. So then you'll have to log in again. So we're going to go ahead and click the login link. So that takes us back here. So now we're going to log in again, widget company admin, widget company admin, and our password. All right. So now you will notice, while it looks the same, you'll notice that up here in the top menu, by default, widget company was sitting right beside the WordPress logo. Now it starts with the My Sites, which is the network admin menu. So within network admin, you have a network dashboard, which looks slightly different. So you have the home dashboard. So it gives you a network overview where it tells you have one site and one user. You can create a site, create a user from here. You can search users, search sites. And then you'll notice the site health widget does not exist at the network level, but the WordPress news and events widget does. You'll notice there's nothing else available on this dashboard right now. Those are the only two options. Underneath the network dashboard, you also have the WordPress updates and the upgrade network screen. Whenever you upgrade or update WordPress, you do have to upgrade the network as well. So if you go to sites, it'll list your default site here. This is where you add new sites. The users is all the users within your network. The themes, so these are all of the themes installed for the entire network. So this is another key difference. You have to install the theme and network enable the theme in order for it to become available to any of the sites on your network. The plugins, again, add new. You can install the plugins here. Once they're installed, they're available to be activated on an individual subsite. If you network activate a plugin, it is just that. It is network active. The individual subsite cannot deactivate it. It's only managed at this level. And then settings, again, so network settings, network setup. So if we go to network setup, this is how we're currently set up. You'll notice there is no option to revert once you've selected your setup. Once you've created subsites, you're really stuck at that point. You cannot convert this without starting entirely over. So let's go to network settings screen. So this is basically all the defaults for how the network is going to operate. So our network title is the widget company sites, which we saw that somewhere else already. Could have been underneath sites or on the main dashboard. The network admin email, again, is the one that we entered when we set up the network by default. Registration settings. So by default, registration is disabled, which means user accounts and sites cannot be registered individually. They can only be configured by the administrator or the network level administrator. Let's put it that way. So registration notification, basically this will send an email notification every time someone registers a site or user account. That's up to you whether you want to leave that on or turn it off. Once subsites are created, if you check the add new users box, this will allow the subsite level administrators to add users at their level. That's super convenient if you don't want your network level administrator to have to manage all the user accounts. But really, that's if somebody wants to manually register a user at that level. So banned names. So this is basically any usernames in this list will not be allowed to be registered. So www, web, root, admin, administrator. These user accounts are not authorized to be registered anywhere on the network. The limited email registrations, so you can lock this down to specific domains. So if you were creating an intranet and you only wanted users with the same domain and their email address to be able to be registered, you'd enter that domain here. Same thing if you want to ban certain domains, like you don't want Yahoo addresses, you can enter those. Default new site settings. So this gives you a shell for the content of an email that'll be sent to an administrator when a new site is registered. New user email automatically creates a first post. These are all templates that can be defined. You could also do this via a WordPress hook if you wanted to, and if you didn't want a first post to be created, you should be able to delete the content in there and it will not generate a first post. So skipping down to upload settings. So site upload space, basically it'll cap the total number or the total amount of hard drive space it'll be allowed for uploading documents, images, etc., etc. If you need to, you can enable that and set it to a reasonable amount of space. I'm going to leave that disabled. Upload file types is just that. These are the extensions that'll be allowed to be uploaded. So you got all the common media formats along with Word docs, PDFs, PowerPoints, open documents, MP3, MP4s. I don't see MKV in here, but that's not a huge ordeal. If you don't need it, don't use it. Max upload file size. So by default, This does not pick up, or maybe it is picking up, because I didn't modify the upload file size in my PHP configuration. So in this case, this is like 1.5 megs is the max file upload size, roughly. So if you want to allow bigger files, actual quality images, you can bump this up to that's 2 megs. So we'll do 4096. We'll allow 4 meg file uploads. Language settings, again, it defaults to the language you selected. And then the menu settings, enable administration menus. This basically will allow the Subsite administrators to be able to see the plugins that are installed, and then that'll then allow them to activate and deactivate plugins. So we're going to go ahead and save these changes. All right, so if we go to our main site, and we're just going to hit edit just because I want to show you what this all looks like. So the site address and URL is widgetcompany.local. So it is a public site, and it was registered when we just set this up. And if we go to the users tab, so these are the users that are registered underneath the main site. The themes, so these are additional themes that are available, and it tells you that network enabled themes are not shown on this screen. So I guess that means that if I install another theme, so let's go ahead and we'll reinstall 2022. I'm not going to keep it, but I just want to make sure that this is showing me what I think it's showing me. So if I go to themes, yeah, so 2022 theme is installed, and it's available to be enabled on said site. So if I enable this here, in theory, it should show up as enabled on that Subsite dashboard. So, for example, if I go to Widget Company, and if I go down to themes, right now the only theme that's available is 2023. So if I go back in and I enable 2022, and then go back to Widget Company and go to Appearance and Themes, then 2022 is available to be activated on the site. So now let's go back to the main site settings again. So again, the main site, you cannot adjust the URL. You are locked into the network level. But you can scroll through, and this is a huge laundry list of options. I really wish WordPress would clean up this settings screen, because this is any option that's in the options table. So if you have if you install WooCommerce, eventually you're going to see all the WooCommerce options on this screen. So this screen is really, in my mind, this is not a useful screen to be used. Because it just gets exceedingly long. So going back to sites, let's just go ahead and make sure that we didn't miss anything that we need to talk about before moving on. Okay, so one of the things that I did want to do prior to creating a subsite is I want to go into themes. So I'm gonna delete 2022, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to install one of my favorite themes, Bloxy. Oh, I did not mean to click the details. I meant to click install. All right, so that's installed, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to visit creativethemes.com and documentation, child theme. Download Bloxy child theme. There we go. Okay, so it is downloaded. And then we're going to upload Bloxy child and install it. All right. So then we're going to network enable Bloxy child. And we're going to go into plugins. And we're going to look for the Bloxy companion plugin. And we're going to install that. And we're going to activate the Bloxy companion. So basically, the Bloxy companion is network activated. One of the things that we're going to force, though, because as I said, by default, so while the theme is enabled, it's not activated by default. So I believe it's going to default to the 2023 theme for every site that we install or activate on our network. So in our WP config file, we're going to do another setting. We're going to define WP default theme Bloxy child. So by default, that is the slug. That is the slug for the theme. So if we go into the themes directory, you'll see the folder name is Bloxy child, but also if we open the style.css, the parent theme is Bloxy. So by default, the theme slug is the name of the folder. So by adding that, so our main site is not going to change. All right, so it tells you right now, Bloxy Companion is complementary plugin for the theme. So it tells us to install and activate the theme, right? So if we go into themes, you'll see that 2023 is still the default. And you'll notice since we never network activated the Bloxy parent theme, that does not show up. So we're going to go ahead and activate Bloxy child on the main site. So now you'll see we are running WordPress 6.1 using Bloxy child theme. All right, our final step here in this tutorial is to create a brand new subsite. So we're going to go to our network admin and sites, and we're going to add new. Now, as I stated previously, since we're not running a DNS server, and as I covered in the original tutorial, we need to edit our hosts file, which is located in the Windows System 32 drivers etc folder. So in order to do this, we need to open Notepad as administrator. And I'm going to see if this will let me drag and drop. I don't remember trying this before. No. So now we have to open our file. See, Windows System 32 drivers etc. Show me all files, and we need to open the host file. All right, so when we initially set up XAMPP, we had set an alias for www.widgetcompany.local. All right, so while we don't really need it, we're going to go ahead and keep that in there because we need to have a fallback. So right now, the next site we're going to do, we're going to create a marketing website. So marketing.widgetcompany.local. Make sure I didn't do any more double I's. Marketing.widgetcompany.local. Okay. So we're going to save our host file. And for the site address, all we're going to do is enter marketing. And the site title is going to be widget marketing. And we're just going to keep the default admin. So if you enter a unknown email address here, or one that's not previously registered in the database, it'll create a user account using that email address. It's going to make that user the administrator of the subsite, and it'll send an email to the network admin as well as the new user that gets created. So in this case, I'm not so keen on creating a brand new user and using another email address. I don't think it's needed as long as you understand the process of what this is going to do. So since we added our host file entry, once we hit add site, fingers crossed, everything works 100% as expected. So we should get the new site. All right, so we did get the success notice. Site added, visit the dashboard, or edit the site. So if I go up to sites, now as the super admin, I see widget company and widget marketing. So now I can go into the dashboard. And again, because we use self-signed SSL certificates, that's why this prompt is coming up. We did create a wildcard certificate. So this will work. And there we go. So now we are in widget marketing site. Again, it tells us we're running WordPress 6.1.1 using the Bloxy child theme. It did create a default post and a default comment. So again, we'll just double check here. We go into general. So site title, empty tagline. So it did not pick up the time zone from the network. So again, we can change the time zone. If this subsite is in a different time zone, you can do that. And if we go to permalinks, again, this will default. This one did not default back to plain. This one defaulted to day and time. So again, we're going to go to post name, and we're going to save. And if we look at pages, we got the sample page by default, and we've got the Hello World post by default. So you can clean those up and start generating content. But the main important thing was to cover the WordPress installation process on a local development server using virtual hosts, and not just core subdirectories. Again, the WordPress core plus the WordPress MultiSite install. So if we visit our site, widget company, so we go to widgetcompany.local, there's that one. And if we go to the marketing site, because we did not set a default homepage, this one defaults to the list of blog posts. In the menu system, for WordPress, if you don't create a menu, it defaults to listing all the pages that are created. So that's why the menu looks the way it does. So I really hope that you guys found this tutorial helpful. If you have any questions, comments, suggestions, I'd love to hear about them. Put them down in the comments below. Again, if the tutorial was useful, smash that like button. I really hope to come back a little bit sooner with the next video. The days seem to span, and I run out of time on creating video content some days. So again, my name was Charles, CP Web Designs. I appreciate your time, and hopefully you guys have a great rest of your weekend and a great week.